Thank you. So I'm a real estate investor in New York. I live in Manhattan. Most of our business is on Long Island, so I'll say the suburbs of New York City. And we flip, we wholesale. We've had a bunch of rentals that we're almost done selling. But we use a bunch of the different Zoho applications and functionality in our business. And I think a bunch of the stuff I'll show is just as relevant to the realtors as it is the investors. So the automation stuff I'll talk about first. And I'm going to share my screen. So I guess one of the initial challenges or roadblocks I ran into versus what I was looking to achieve was to be able to have really long follow-up sequences with many, many touches. And with the built-in kind of workflows, they weren't as flexible and I think you can only have something like 5 touches or 5 scheduled actions in a workflow. So that I was looking to do what I've seen in a lot of other, I'll say, real estate specific CRMs, which is have these really long drip sequences with cross platform outreach, I'll say. So text message, email, ringless voicemail, phone calls, and whatnot. So I ended up building what I called action plans, which are these sequences, and they can get applied to a given lead. So I'm just going to go into one of them. So this is my sequence for a new web lead. So when a new web lead comes in, it comes into Zoho via a webhook and Zoho Flow. And I'm going to show some stuff in Zoho Flow as well. But what I have here, let me make this a little bigger, is a whole series of actions that will happen when a lead gets this action plan applied. So it's a mixture. The first thing that happens is a task gets created for a specific user, and this is the title of the task: leave a voicemail and send an email template that we have. So that happens immediately. Once the sequence kind of waits for user actions. So this is a manual task that a user on our team has to perform. Once they complete that task, we have an automatic text message that goes out. So the assumption is they called and they did not get in touch with the person. So we're going to continue this action plan. If they do get in touch with the person, they change the status and the action plan goes away. And so basically, as long as the action plan is still linked to the property, it's going to continue through these tasks or through these actions. So we have a manual task, we have an automated SMS message that goes out, and we're using CallRail for all of our phone systems for dynamic number insertion on our website and different tracking numbers. I think we have 50 plus phone numbers through CallRail, so we could properly attribute our leads. So the text messages goes out. Again, there's another manual task, text, manual task. And then we get into some more just messages. We have some like dynamic variables. So we'll pull in the lead's address, so we can customize with their first name, customize with the address, some of the messages. We also have integrated with ringless voicemail with slide broadcast. So that's also one of the steps here. And so here we're seeing basically some manual tasks, SMS messages, ringless voicemail. And what also happens, we're also using Zoho campaigns to manage the email side of it. So when a lead gets that action plan assigned to them, they end up um, getting synced in Zoho campaigns to a smart list, which is just basically filtering for anyone with that action plan. And they get assigned to a smart list with a matching name. So new lead web, which is the same as the action plan we were looking at here. And once they're part of that list in campaigns, they enter this email journey. So this is also following a similar approach. We wait 7 days because at the beginning, all the interactions, all the emails that are sent are manual, and then we kind of shift over after a week if we've still been able to get unable to get a hold of them through those other methods. We add in these automated emails, so drip sequence. So this goes on for I don't know a handful of months, even beyond where the other sequences kind of slow down or end. So that's how we've basically combined um, this email uh, functionality in campaigns where we've seen very good like email deliverability and whatnot with some of the automated stuff before. And so just to show you, I'm looking at a lead record here. And when an action plan gets linked, the first thing it does is it creates kind of the first step in the process. So we just saw the first step was this manual task with this name. And if we look at closed activities, we're going to see there was leave voicemail, send email template one. So that got completed and this process continued and it went and a few minutes later. So it was completed at 10:48. At 10:48, it said, "Okay, we need to send a text message." And then the system, usually within 5 minutes, it's able to run all the triggers. So 3 minutes later, it successfully sent out this text message. Um, and then when it was time based on the delay, created the subsequent task when that got completed. So we have timestamps for when it was created by the system and when it was either completed by the user or the system. And so basically now where we are at the moment on this lead is as of yesterday at 4:09, it created a new task for third call attempt, which we have right here. So when this call attempt gets completed, that action plan kind of will proceed. Um, so to me, this allowed us to have a ton of flexibility with how we create our follow-up sequences. And I'm able to move around. I'm able to add items. Um, I can also apply or remove tags. So if I want to tag something like I think in one of the files, I'll tag something if I unable to reach the property. I can apply a tag, unable to contact. And so everything's configurable, whether I want to wait days, hours, or minutes, and whether I want the actions to trigger on a weekend or not. Because if I know our sales reps, aren't actively working on the weekends, I don't want to send a follow-up text on a weekend when I know we won't be able to respond to it. So I delay it until Monday in that case. So this has provided a lot of uh, flexibility for me. We have a lot of different action plans for different use cases. So that's for new lead web, but we also have them kind of further in the sales process. So we have action plans for offer made, offer rejected. So for example, offer made, a lot of time we make an offer and they ghost us. So we obviously continue to try to follow up manually, but also after a month, it will kick in with the automatic follow-ups as well. and there's similar emails associated with it to try to kind of re-engage with them. Um, any questions on that? I know that could be a lot in itself.
Where are you creating that from? Where, like the action
So,
plan?
so the action plans is basically a custom module I have, and this whole thing works on. There's two modules. There's action plans and the action plan steps, and I think this whole thing runs on those two modules and about 5 custom functions. And so the way it's kind of configured is when one of the action plans, which I'll call like the template, right? When one of the action plans gets assigned to a lead, um, we don't just copy all of the steps at once because I wanted to be able to kind of dynamically adjust the action plan. So if I wanted to change the template, if I only design it as a 6-month template, and then now I have users that are 3 months into the template, and I want to add another 6 months of follow up items, I didn't want those people to just end at 6 months and be done. I wanted them to kind of take the latest version of the template at any given moment.
Mhm.
So when that link is made between the two, we copy over like one step at a time. So if I assign offer made to someone, there's a function, a custom function that looks at the action plan, kind of figures out what the first step is, and then creates what we have an action plan step record. So this is like an instance of the step. So what you're seeing on a given lead are these action plan steps. So this is I like almost cloned a step out of the template and applied it onto this lead. And then once I have that here, it's a little easier. Then I'm able to just run it based on triggers in the workflow functionality. So I'm looking. I have a workflow, and I'll show it. It runs another custom function, but the workflow trigger is based on this trigger time here. And so when Zoho sees that the time is up, it then executes, whatever the functionality is. So it's those two modules and really a couple uh, workflows and functions that are managing this sequence. And the reason we need a few is we need kind of a function to uh, create the first action plan step when I associate a lead to an action plan. And then I need a different one to basically schedule the subsequent action plans or the action plan steps. So once one thing happens successfully, it then looks at scheduling the next one. So the trigger on creation of the first one versus creation of the subsequent ones are a little different because I'm looking on the subsequent ones at the completion of one, whereas on the first one I'm looking on the update field on a lead. Um, and then I basically am using one function for just sending the trigger. So if it's this is kind of where where I've done my integrations, and don't be scared by this. It's not too crazy. It's some lines of code, but what it's doing simply, and this is where if you wanted to do something similar and integrate with, I think like Reed in the past has talked about integrating with direct mail providers or different providers than I have. I've done something simple like if it's SMS, we run through this code, we integrate with CallRail and do that. Whereas if it's RVM, we do something else. Um, and if it's a task, we go through a different function altogether. So it's kind of was a matter of mapping out what this sequence of events looks like, and I guess getting it to work according to my needs. And there's some things it doesn't do, which we could probably come up with a way. But for example, if you like remove an action plan from someone and then want them to go back on the same action plan, they're going to start from the beginning. They're not going to continue where they left off. So to add that sort of functionality would require some additional work from what I have, but it's totally doable. So one of the things I like about Zoho is just that it's super flexible. And if there's something that you want it to do that you can't do, or that it doesn't do out of the box, there's there's probably a way to do it. Um, you know, by tinkering with the custom functions provide a lot of flexibility. I don't know if that answered your question. There's a lot.
There's a lot. It's awesome and also a little overwhelming. So for
Yeah,
me and Chris here with me that are like trying to digest it all, if I was starting from the beginning, because it looks like you created those modules yourself, like where would I
right.
start? Call Zoho support.
Yeah, probably with like I don't know if you or someone on the team kind of knows how to code or knows the custom functions and whatnot, but you may want to engage with a Zoho partner or maybe Zoho support. Um, this is my background was in tech. I've taught myself how to code, so I was able to do some of this stuff. But the key, I guess, is like imagine there's no rules and try to map out what you want it to do. I went through a lot of different like whiteboarding notes and stuff about how I could set things up and kind of as I'm drawing it out, I would run into, different limitations with the design. So kind of architecting it in a way that will ultimately meet your needs. This whole thing is probably like 2 or 300 lines of code, so it's not like that crazy. Um, Quite frankly, the hard part is coming up with what you want to do. Um, and then I think, whether you or Zoho partner or Zoho support's able to help you with that, the implementation is not too bad.
Yeah, I got a
So
question.
Ben, this is Chris. Oh,
Oh, sorry.
no problem. So I think what I've read and looking at is whiteboarding, thinking out your whole process and leaving it on a board and going back and changing. About how often do you change a process that you have set up because you find something more efficient or something works better?
Um, this this action plan stuff I haven't really messed with because it worked and I didn't want and I didn't want to mess it up because it's obviously like business critical. Um and it does, 90% of what I was looking for. So this type of stuff I haven't really made huge changes to. We definitely make more regular changes to just fields or adding. We'll change like some blueprint stuff, or add new fields, but not too much. Like our system, we've been using this for probably about 3 years now. The action plan stuff is probably a year and a half old, but in the last year or so, I think the system's been relatively stable. We haven't made too many changes. It's in a pretty good spot.
I had a question about the email sequences. You said what part of the email sequence did you say you was manually doing the outreach?
So for the just kind of defined in my business process for the first few times we reach out, we'll manually send an email. So like this first call, We'll call them. If they don't answer, we'll leave a voicemail and we'll send an email. And we have a template for that. And then we send an email again, maybe day 3 or something with another template. So those are just sent out manually. But those could be, I'll say, automated or put right into Zoho campaigns from the get-go. There's nothing that really prevents that. I just want my
And what
team kind of touching that lead manually at the early stages.
point do you archive a lead or just save it and stop a campaign? 6 months or?
Yeah, I think my new lead campaigns go for about a little over 2 months of texting and manual calling, and then the emails go for between 6 and 9 months. And I'd like to extend the time on the email. I don't want to necessarily keep texting them and calling them just because I don't, we don't want our phone numbers to get spammed and whatnot. So we don't want to do like too much automated stuff to numbers that may not be good numbers, because that doesn't reflect well on I'll say our caller reputation.
Hey, Ben, why did you decide to use campaign instead of marketing automation? I know you can't use both at the same time with CRM, but marketing automation seems to have more. Was there a particular reason?
Yeah, so we had already been using campaigns. We used campaigns for our buyers list blasts when we have off-market deals. We send them out to our buyers through campaigns. And I played around with Marketing Hub or Marketing Automation, I think it's called now. And I was a little overwhelmed by it, but I was only really going to use it for email because there is a SMS integration or SMS functionality within Marketing Hub, but they didn't support the vendor that I was using anyway. So I was kind of going to be using what I'll consider a larger system for just the email anyway. So I decided to stick with campaigns.
Okay, gotcha.
I would love to be able to do some more stuff in Marketing Hub, but I haven't explored that lately. All right, if there's no more questions about the automation stuff, I can continue.
A quick one, if
We
you.
could always yeah, go ahead.
I've got a quick one if you can answer. In reference to, first off, Marketing Hub, I believe it was in beta. I'm not sure if they've actually released the final version yet. And somebody mentioned that you can't do campaigns and Hub together. That's my understanding as well. But in reference to both campaigns and Marketing Hub, given that Apple is no longer allowing pixels on their emails, how do you know when somebody's actually opened up an email and therefore send out the secondary or third email? What process are you doing, or are you just sending general emails?
Yeah, we're in our flow. We're not looking for their reply. We're just basically continuing to fire them off, regardless of whether they open them, regardless of if they reply. The theory being, if they reply, our sales team is involved and they're going to get taken off the automated plan. And if it bounces, they're going to get kind of automatically opted out of the email anyway. So in any of these flows, or really anything we do, we're not using that kind of functionality in Journey Builder where we're looking for their response or any action taken on the email.
I think that's the way to go from now on, given that pixels aren't allowed.
And I think, if I'm correct, I think we might be sending like plain text emails anyway, just like, I want to increase deliverability. So we're not sending images or anything like that. We're trying to be, say, bare bones, hopefully get their eyes on it.
From a deliverability, or not deliverability, but rather from an open rate, and are you testing the emails, or are you are you sending sales pitches, or more like information that would be helpful to the person?
These are, I'll say it depends on the flow. Like on this new lead one, we're just trying to get them to talk to us about an offer. So let's see like what this says. Following up on your interest. Are you still interested in receiving an offer? Kind of, we buy cash, can close quickly. Let me know when you'd like to connect. And we use Zoho bookings in some of our text message and email follow-up, and give them a link to book an appointment with us. In some of the emails that we have, like offer made or offer rejected, those like a re-engagement campaign or trying to close the deal, we'll send some more informative stuff. So we'll say, people who try to fix their homes don't get, a good ROI on their investments, and other kind of resources. We have blog posts that we'll link them to. So we'll send them a mix of kind of, hey, we're still here for you, and also here's some stuff that might be interesting to you during your journey about selling your property.
Makes sense, because otherwise, if it's always a sales pitch, they're gonna avoid it after a point in time.
Exactly. Yep. And what I kind of have dreamed of doing and never have gotten around to it is to make much more targeted, not for the new lead stuff, but for what's on my to-do list is to create some stuff for like unqualified leads. So people who are looking for too much money for their home or something like that. And if we can group them into buckets, we can have much more segmented campaigns. So, we could have a landlord oriented campaign that speaks to dealing with tenants, send it on the 5th of the month. Hey, did you guys collect your rent this month? You could send all sorts of stuff that's much more targeted. So we haven't gotten around to that. We just have some generic sequences. But that's on my to-do list.
Sounds like and I have no experience with this. Maybe somebody does, but ClickFunnels is one of those companies that's, my understanding, is built around targeted funnels, as you're describing.
Yeah, I guess the difference is, and I'm not familiar with ClickFunnels, but the targeting in this use case is all based on like their whether or not they were qualified with our sales team, right? We've already had a discussion with them. So at that point, we can put them into the appropriate bucket. Whereas from my little knowledge of ClickFunnels is like, they're trying to like self-segment, right? Like based on what someone might be interested in. But yeah, we can do the segmentation manually. It's really just a matter of developing the sequences and messages to go out to them.
Well done. Very interesting.
Awesome. And I'll just continue. All right, one other thing I wanted to show. So as I mentioned, we use CallRail for all our inbound as well as outbound calls, and it's good for inbound. It's not great for outbound, but one of the things that we did to make, I'll say, the integration with Zoho a little more, well, to make an integration with Zoho, because there is not a native integration. So we created a communications module, and it's separate from the calls module, or the I guess the activities module with calls, because I found that at least when I set this up a couple of years ago, I think there's now a little more flexibility to customize some of these, but I don't think there was back then. So there were like custom fields, custom functionality that I wanted. So all of our calls get logged. CallRail sends a webhook to Zoho Flow, and Zoho Flow has a whole process to look up the lead or contact and associate the text message or phone call with that contact. So here's an example where we could see there was a outbound call made, an outbound text message made, which happened to be from the automated sequence. I guess we didn't get in touch with them or got no voicemail, but there would be a recording link, which would bring us right to listen to the call here. But I guess the cooler thing is that we built this widget, and was my first experience with widgets, where we pop up this screen. It pulls in, if the customer had multiple phone numbers, it would give us a choice of their different phone numbers. And then it pulls in all our different CallRail phone numbers. So we're able to send a message out from anyone's phone number on the team. We could send the message out from the same number they called. We could send it out from our salesperson. So each person has their own number, and as well as a bunch of generic numbers. So we could choose where the number goes out from. We could type in a message, hit send, or similarly, the way CallRail works is if I hit start call, it will call my cell phone and then ask me to press 1 to connect with the customer. So this is like, we don't have a click to call type of functionality because CallRail doesn't have that. So this was kind of the next best thing to make it, easy to make some outbound calls to our prospects. So building the widget really was kind of easier than I expected. In terms of code, it wasn't too much and doesn't look pretty, but it works. But I think the whole thing is done in like JavaScript and jQuery. I was able to make a API call out to CallRail to populate this list of phone numbers, call into Zoho to get the list of phone numbers on the lead, and then one more call when we either send the message or want to initiate the call. But that was kind of my way of building a poor man's like telephony integration into CRM.
Hey, Ben, Chris Chiatti here. I got a quick question on the
Yeah.
action plan modules, those 2 modules. You mentioned, requires some code and a developer. They're usually like hourly based. What's your best guess on how many hours they probably went into them writing up the code for those 2 modules?
So I did it myself on this. I would say I probably spent like 40 hours on the whole project, including architecting, trying it, running into roadblocks, trying it a different way, and debugging the code. And I'm not like a programmer. I can kind of finagle my way through it. So I think someone who knows what they're doing could probably do it in 10 hours ish of time. I think would be a reasonable estimate.
Oh, that's awesome. And would you recommend like someone that's kind of pretty advanced, or do you think, well, I'm not sure how you could even vet one of the developers, but would they have to be
Yeah,
really, really good, or just someone?
I don't think so. I think, like I said, the code itself isn't really too advanced. It's kind of understanding how Zoho works. And so I think anyone who's comfortable writing some of these custom functions to do anything more than like, update a field or do some super basic functionality, I think as long as they're comfortable with that sort of stuff, I think it would be something they'd be able to do.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
Ben, if you can
Alright.
think back before you ever knew Zoho, when you start, I don't have programming background, but there are a lot of things on the Zoho site, resources. Just jump in and follow them and just use it every day. What do you say?
If you're trying to learn how to write some of this stuff, the custom functions, or
No,
just
first really you said the important word, learn, understand what Zoho is doing. How do you use it? Because there's
yeah,
so many things without coding that are
that you can
there.
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think to me, I'm a tinkerer, and I think that's the best way that I learn. And I don't know if you guys have played, but there is like a Zoho sandbox. So you can make changes, you can play around without messing any of your own production up. And then if you like what you see in the sandbox, you can push it into production. So I'll have some, I'll play around in a sandbox and see if things do what I want, and then a lot of times I'll run down a path and get stuck somewhere. There's something works a way that I didn't know or was hoping it didn't, and then I'll have to rethink it, and I could delete the sandbox and start fresh and try going down a different path. So I think just playing around, creating custom modules and you know trying to do different things that you want to do is the best way to learn personally.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Um, and on the topic of the CallRail integration, so to me, lead attribution is a very important thing. So we have the lead source, which is like if this was from a purchase list or if it's a website visitor or website call. And then I have this custom field for first campaign interaction and first campaign interaction date. And these are what I use for attribution. So this would be direct's kind of a boring one because we don't really know, but it's generally like a Google organic visit. But this would be like Google organic, Google paid, Bing organic, Bing paid, direct mail. And if it's direct mail, it gets assigned to the specific postcard or letter that they responded to. And this date gets filled in, basically our first touch with the customer. So we credit the lead source to whatever our first engagement with that customer is. And since a lot of our stuff comes through the phone, the website stuff is easy because those come right in. I can assign them. But a lot of the stuff comes through CallRail on the phone. So we have this very long Zoho Flow built out, which again looks a little more intimidating than it is because there's a lot of little steps. But when the lead comes in, we have to fix the date time, we have to clean up the phone to remove dashes and whatnot. And then we have to make sure it's not like an unknown number. Then we're basically looking to see if this caller matches any existing lead or contact. So if it's an existing lead or contact, we'll either just link the communication to them. Or if it's a new lead, we have to kind of figure out, okay, what was the source of that call? Did they press any option on the IVR, which is like our press 1 to speak to sales, press 2 for requesting information. So we capture that. And that ends up going into this question. And one of the things that makes this so long is like, these are all our different lead sources. So we look and say, does that lead already have a first campaign interaction? Are they already attributed to a lead source? And if not, then we want to figure out which lead source they matched, and we then assign that lead source to them. So there's a lot of steps here, but it's really not doing anything more advanced than looking if this is an existing lead or not and determining if they have a lead source or not, and assigning the appropriate one if not. So we're using Zoho Flow for a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff with CallRail. Like I mentioned, all our inbound and outbound SMS and phone calls get logged via Zoho Flow workflows. The rest are much simpler. And then we have other stuff. If a new person registers on our cash buyer website, they get added as a contact in here. Intro calls booked from Zoho Bookings. So we're using a bunch of flows, and we use a good amount of steps or whatever of tasks every month. We had to upgrade our plan to support that. And then I think we wanted to show this construction dashboard. So in Zoho Analytics, since we're doing flips, we use QuickBooks for all of our accounting, and we actually have 2 different QuickBooks accounts because we have different entities. And so Zoho Flow has given a lot of flexibility to handle that situation, because I was able to basically create a data set here that combined, first of all, Zoho Flow, Zoho Analytics natively syncs with QuickBooks. So that is great. We have 2 QuickBooks connectors in here. And what we are able to do is then take all of the data. We basically have 2 like expense line item tables. So we take the expense line item table from one entity, take the one from the other entity, and join them in SQL. And now we have a consolidated view. And the reason this is important to us is we don't want to give access to QuickBooks to our like project manager, for example. It has our owner's equity, it has our P&L, and the permissions in QuickBooks aren't very good. So I want him to see how much we've spent on a given project, but I don't want him to see everything else. So this was our way of exposing the data that he needs to see, which is who we've paid, how much we've paid, what does our budget look like on a given property. So, and this works pretty well on mobile too. So he has access to this dashboard, he chooses a property, and these properties are just actually QuickBooks classes. And it just filters these different views. So you could see this is our total construction budget, our total carrying cost, or not budget, but actuals, total carrying cost actuals. We could see who we've paid those payments out to on carrying and construction. And then we could even see more line item details of each check that was paid, when it was paid, how much it was for. So this gives him all the line item details that he'd be able to get in QuickBooks without having to give access to QuickBooks. So that was a big win for us. And let's see, the other thing that we have done, this one's a quick one, which is offers. And this is maybe interesting for the realtors out there. We use this for when we wholesale a property, and we have cash buyers that are making offers on them. We have a Zoho Creator app that we built for offers. And we have a website where we post all our deals to, and on that website, there's a link to submit an offer. So they go fill out this form. When we click on this property drop-down list, it's actually pulling these values from CRM, and it's based on the status that the property has to be of type wholesale and of stage on market. And if it meets those 2 criterias, it goes into a certain view, and Creator is pulling from that view. So they're able to select the specific property they want to make an offer on. They, just fill out the information. They attach proof of funds, attach an offer, write in any terms, and that gets sucked or pushed, I guess, right into CRM. So that way our dispositions manager can review the offers, the attachments that they upload get attached right to the offer, and the offers get linked to a contact. So if it's a new person making an offer, the new contact gets created. If it's an existing contact, it just gets linked, and it's automatically linked to the property. Since the property's in the drop down, that was very easy to link it to. And what's really nice is we then, when we're looking at a given deal, we're able to just kind of look through all the offers on an easy screen and see, pick one. And what else? I guess the only other thing that I can show is we have some in Zoho Analytics. We're also pulling in some information from some different sources. We have like our web traffic from Google Analytics gets pulled in. And this is a marketing KPI scorecard. So this is looking at just a 1 week time frame. We look at our marketing expense by channel, and this gets pulled in from QuickBooks. And then these leads, PPC and SEO leads, direct mail and cold calling, get pulled in from CRM data. And then SMS leads gets pulled in from a Google Sheet, actually. So analytics is cool in that we could take a bunch of different pieces and data sources and combine it into one place. So we have a weekly level 10 meeting, and these are some of the like KPIs that we're tracking on the marketing side. We have similar dashboards for acquisitions, for lead management, and whatnot. But I think that is what I've got for you.
So Ben, I've got a
Happy
question.
to
Chris
answer any
Chiatti here
questions.
again.
Yeah.
So, you've been doing this for a while, and you're well familiar with all of the out of the box solutions that are out there for real estate investors and folks in your vertical. You've put quite a bit of work into your system, but thank you for saying not to be intimidated by it. Do you what's the main difference between what you found with what you get with the Zoho One or the Zoho Suite versus what's already out there that's made for you that caters to what you do that you can justify with ROI wise?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because I get asked, we run a meetup, and I get asked from a lot of investors starting out, probably multiple times a week, contact me and ask about the business. And I mentioned to everyone that I use Zoho, and I say for someone starting out, I honestly don't think it's the right fit because it took me a lot of customization, and I was able to do it personally, and I kind of like this stuff. So for me, I was able to get it to that place, and I'll say have a good time doing it over the time. It took me 40 hours, but that's like working at nights and just tinkering and fooling around with it. But I think if someone's just starting out, their attention should probably be towards something more building their business oriented. But to me, Zoho, the reason I chose Zoho was the flexibility in that, like, a lot of the other real estate CRMs are very closed. While they out of the box offer drip campaigns, and that sort of stuff that I had to build, they're limited in what else they can do. So for me, it was a decision of let me pick something that maybe checks fewer boxes today, but has more upside potential. And that was kind of the path that I went. And quite frankly, the pricing model and whatnot of Zoho One is very compelling because people still need, a DocuSign alternative or a project management tool and other things that they end up paying probably separate licenses for. But I think for like a really small, shop, it's maybe overkill. Like I view Zoho as like pretty enterprise of a product, and it has a lot of functionality and a lot of capabilities, but it's definitely a bit more overwhelming than some of the out of the box stuff. So either you gotta put in the time or probably bring on a partner for some customization. Um, but there's more potential with Zoho than the other systems.
Thank you.
That makes sense?
100%.
So, all the work that you've done, all the tinkering, do you have more that is on your plan going forward that you want to? I mean, I'm sure you're always tinkering here and there, but do you have it in a good spot for your business as you see it?
So there's I'll say two other kind of big things I thought about. One which was cool. Amy presented on the last meetup, and some of the stuff that her and her company are doing are really, really impressive. Where they're like generating whole websites and whole presentations based off data in Zoho. So one of the things I thought about was basically having my buyer's website when we're wholesaling a property to pull information from Zoho and just have it there. Because right now it's a WordPress website. If we have a deal we want to market, it requires uploading all separate data into WordPress. I kind of decided, to me, that wasn't worth it with the volume we do and whatnot, and we have some VAs do some of that work manually. So I didn't think, for me, there was an ROI. I think in a higher volume business that could make sense. But the big project that I'm trying to figure out right now is how to get more property data into the system, because we use an Zoho, for me, in my workflow, kind of comes in once we have, I'll say, a lead, but we have a lot of prospects. We actively market to, at any given time, 50,000 plus homes, and I have data on 1 million properties in my market, and I manage that in a separate system. So we use that system to prioritize who we go after and to manage the marketing sequences. So, that these people, out of that 50,000, they're kind of tiered. So maybe the top 10,000 I send mail to monthly, and the bottom 20,000 I send it every, 10 weeks, for example. I use this other system to manage those cadences. I would love to be able to have all 1 million properties in Zoho in a way that makes sense, and then manage those cadences through here. And the big reason being is having two systems creates its own set of problems, because if I have a website lead that comes in, they come right into Zoho, but maybe I'm marketing to that person in this other system. And in Zoho, now we have a conversation with that person and we determine they're not qualified, we're not a good fit. I want that data to inform my marketing system to say, hey, stop marketing to this person. We've already spoken to them, it's not a good fit. But right now we have kind of a disconnect. So I would like to be able to get that into Zoho so we can really close that loop.
Is the other system a database, or do you mind naming it? Or
It's called 80/20 REI. It's kind of half database. I mean, it's a fancy database, but they're pulling current data on properties, and then we have this scoring system to prioritize who we go after. It's nothing really too fancy in reality. I mean, once you have the data, the scoring part isn't hard, but to be able to manage that, handle the system updates and whatnot on a scale of data that is that big becomes a little more of a challenge. And I guess the other reason for this is that I've been running into more problems with like duplicate data, because unfortunately with Zoho, like duplication rules or whatever it's called, like the validation you have around there, we're limited on what we can do when it comes to property data, because it's not just like a street address that I'm making sure is unique. It's the combination of the street and I'll say at least the zip code that needs to be unique. But also some people might write ST for street, some people might write STREET, and so we end up with duplicate records in our system without really a great way to prevent that. But if we had kind of the master set of here's all the properties, every lead is linked to a property, because that's the whole scope of the world, we could avoid the duplicates that way.
Ben, this is Sam here. So with regards to the duplicates that you enter while adding an address, right? So we are coming up with an update in CRM. So for example, as soon as you start typing the address in your mailing city, street, etc., etc., like how you do it in Google, it automatically dynamically fetches the respective address. So we are going to come up with something similar. So when we release it, these small discrepancies will not be there. For example, like you said, somebody will be typing street as ST, somebody will be typing the street as STREET, right? So all these things will be avoided. And based on that, you can add a duplication check. So for example, if you are going to add a building's name or an apartment name, it ensures that it is going to be fetched from the Google Maps API, and so that it's going to automatically update the respective values. So maybe then these things can be avoided in the future, and it's already under development.
Sounds great. And I don't know if it's in if it's in this same plan, but also for some like custom fields, because I know I don't use. We have mailing address, but that's secondary. Like for me, the property address, which is a set of custom fields, is the important one. So I don't know if it supports, custom fields or custom, property type fields, but that would be valuable as well.
Yeah, as far as I know, I can promise that we are going to release it for the default fields as the first phase, and probably in future we can also accommodate the custom fields as well.
Okay, that would be a big help.
I was going to ask a question, maybe to Ben, maybe to Samjay, and that's in reference to the follow-up process. Given that there's a marketplace for apps, is there a possibility that a follow-up process has already been created that you pay $9.99 a month that could be customized, or is that something that perhaps Zoho could help Ben create in order for him to monetize what he's done?
Ben, let me take this. Hi, Miguel, Sam here. So by default, there are like few third-party applications that are available in the marketplace which do these follow-ups. But my advice is for you to reach us out to support or reach us out to the community team so that we can get on a call, understand what type of follow-ups that you need on with respect to your business, how frequently you need it, and try to customize it within the app itself, within the CRM application itself, because that's going to be even more helpful for you to customize it based on the needs and wants of your business rather than developing that as an external application. So my suggestion would be to go on that side of the road.
I would agree, but that also requires quite a bit of time and customization. And, I'm just not in a position to do that. I'd rather pay what I need to pay and have it work with minimal customization on my end. So if I just wonder if there's maybe a team at Zoho that would help Ben in creating a monetization app out of this.
There is a marketplace team which could definitely help Ben to achieve this, and we'll be happy to work with Ben because we know how much knowledge base he has. But again, it has a lot of things taken to be into consideration with respect to striking the right privacy path that Zoho has and how much data is protected when it comes to an application being developed. Because if it's going to be shared across customers, there needs to be a lot of things to be worked upon. But probably we could take this offline, Ben, and we can discuss this on how we can streamline it, and we can
Yeah.
make a final on that.
It's interesting you asked that because it's something I thought about kind of when I had initially built it. And then what kind of gave me pause was like the nature of the integration that I'm integrating with CallRail, right? So not everyone uses CallRail, and then it's the different systems that I chose to integrate personally that I don't know what the market is like for that. So that's kind of what gave me a little bit of pause of going down that path. But it's definitely something I'm open to discussing.